Hello, good morning. Thanks for coming and joining us this morning as we talk about agentic transformation in financial services. My name is Jared Lambert. I'm a group product manager in the CoPilot Studio organization, and I also sponsor many of our financial services clients around the world. I'm joined today by Hemanth and Adrian, who are both going to also join me later on stage to talk about their experiences in this space. We're going to talk about three big things today. We're going to talk about how we see agentic transformation happening in financial services and some of the examples we've seen of that. We're going to talk about some tips and tricks about your transformation, and we're going to hear from Edward Jones about some of their journeys along this space and show you an awesome live demo at the end of the session. All right, without further ado, I went through all of the slides. I was looking through all the various sessions that you're going to see this week, and I was trying to come up with what is the one thing I'm going to say about AI that helps underline its importance at the end of the day. And there was one that really stood out to me, and one stat, and it was this one. It was that effectively AI is meeting and even exceeding human performance in benchmarks when put side by side with PhDs in the same field. And I think this epitomizes where we're at the moment, where you've got this intelligence on tap. You've got this capability that's sitting in an agent or in some sort of a chat experience where you can get almost any bit of intelligence that you need. And what we're trying to figure out is how do we take that intelligence and do something useful with it in our businesses? How do we take that and use it in a way that helps us achieve whatever the goal is that we're trying to do in our various firms? And so when we go and talk to the executives that come around Redmond and meet with us, almost every single one of them says they get it. They get that this is going to transform the way they work. They get that this is going to be an important part of their business, and they're using AI every single day in the work that they do. But they're trying, again, to figure out what is the unit of encapsulation. And in our mind, it's agents. We're trying to figure out how you give these agents particular jobs that you would typically do in your business, things that are routine or things that you would normally add more zeros to your employee count to go and get something done with. And so I want to talk to you about how we see this evolving. We think effectively that we're going to take a human, we're going to give them something that is this interface that they can work with, an orchestrator of sorts. And in our world, that's CoPilot. I think there'll be a bunch of these out there from ChatGPT and others. And we think that that has to be powered by a series of agents. CoPilot alone as a chat interface is not good enough. We need all of the other things that you do in your business. I think of this as analogous today to what you do with a person plus using Windows plus a series of apps. And if you just gave somebody Windows, it's not all that useful. It's really all of these other things that you bring to it, your data, your applications, your workflows, all these things that need to get done. And I think we're rapidly heading into a world where a human doesn't need to be the person that's switching around between all of those different apps, all of those different experiences to get that done. I think we maybe made a slight transition into the web world when we said a person plus a browser plus websites to go and do this. But now I think we're heading to a place where a person plus CoPilot plus a series of agents is the new way that work will get accomplished. And I think that that involves a bunch of changes in the way that we work and the way that we think about things. So first off is that orchestrator layer has to have a ton of context into you, what you're trying to accomplish. You probably heard it earlier this week called Work IQ, and this ability to understand the emails that you've written, even your job title. One of my favorite examples of this is if you go and ask CoPilot something like, tell me about Home Depot, you'll get an okay response for it. But if you say, I'm an investment banker, tell me about Home Depot, you will get a significantly better response for your industry. And just that little bit of context of knowing your job title gives our orchestration this ability to do much better when it goes and accesses the various apps and capabilities that you want to use every single day. So this is the way of the future that we think work is going to happen. We think users are going to express their intent. They're going to express it to something like CoPilot. CoPilot's going to become the front end of that experience. And then it is going to orchestrate a series of agents that are equivalent to your app ecosystem today. And so we think we're rapidly running toward this world. I'm going to ask Hemanth to come on stage and tell you a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing in other financial services firms around the world today. Thanks, Hemanth.
Thank you, Jared. Good morning, all. It's great to be here with all of you at Ignite. My name is Hemanth. I run the global go-to-market for financial services in our sales organization. You probably all heard the term frontier from many times already this week, and will continue to hear it. So I wanted to spend a couple of seconds just grounding on it. We in Microsoft analyzed a lot of data. So we talked to about 31,000 knowledge workers in 31 countries. We factored in LinkedIn labor data as well. And then we also analyze the signals that we get on productivity from our Microsoft 365 product. And what it told us was that frontier firms, the firms of the future, are going to look markedly different than what they are today. And they're going to be characterized by three things that are going to be different. The first one is we are all used to a world where knowledge was expensive, it was hard to get, it was bounded by our time, effort, and cost. But in the future, knowledge is going to be much more easily accessible, and it's going to be abundant all around us. The second is, over time, we are always going to work in an environment where we will be able to delegate some of our tasks to agents who can, under our supervision, do them autonomously. And the third thing that is going to characterize frontier firms is, over time, you will have a situation where humans and agents work together. And for me, as an employee in a frontier firm, I will actually be the CEO of my own agent-cum-human ecosystem. So those are the three things that are going to characterize the frontier firm. Now, let's talk a little bit about what we are seeing in the financial services industry in terms of top AI use cases. So first, let's talk a little bit about banking, improving fraud analysis and detection together with transforming your contact center. Those continue to be patterns that we see a lot. Empowering relationship managers is another key pattern. And as an example here, one of our customers, UBS, they built actually a legal AI assistant. It's built on Azure OpenAI and Azure AI. And what it does for them is it's able to search over a corpus of 26 million legal documents in multiple languages. And the effect of this is that it really reduces the manual effort, it accelerates their legal research, and allows their people to focus on higher value work. Enhancing marketing effectiveness and trying to put AI into core processes such as lending and mortgages continue to be top AI patterns. In capital markets, enhancing the market research and analytics and empowering advisory and sales professionals continue to be top AI patterns we see. Personalizing the client experience is another key pattern. And in fact, one of our customers, Investec, they've actually implemented AI to automatically summarize client histories. They're able to generate meeting recaps. And perhaps most important, they're actually able to update the CRM record directly from within their flow of work without losing the context. So what this does as a benefit is it eliminates manual data entry, it reduces the time spent, and ultimately those professionals can focus on client-facing work, which is really what they have been hired to do rather than administrative work. Improving risk and compliance is another key pattern where we see AI use cases. And in terms of automation, which is the sort of the fifth pattern we see, Old Mutual, one of our customers, they've actually used Microsoft Azure AI, where they are able to automatically predict the customer email requests that they get, and they're able to route them to the right team. So what this does is it reduces their email handling time by almost 80%. So that's a significant benefit. And then third, in insurance, we see a ton of use cases where customers are trying to modernize the claims process, underwriting. Zurich, one of our customers, they've actually transformed the AI, using AI, they've transformed the underwriting process, which allows them to get significant efficiencies. So how are our customers, and all the customers we talk to, how are they actually thinking about this journey? We found that they're thinking about them in three stages. So the first stage is where every employee has a human assistant. So if I think about myself as as a knowledge worker, I used to spend a lot of time trying to think where something is and how do I go find it. Now I no longer do that. What I do is I ask my CoPilot to actually just ask the question, and it produces the information for me. It actually allows me to spend more time working on the information rather than trying to figure out how do I get it and where it is stored. Oftentimes, I can't recall at the top of my head what I need to find. The second stage is going to be where agents join teams as digital colleagues. A lot of us have jobs where we are monitoring events. It could be an adverse event, it could be some other trigger event, and we want to take some action based on that event. Today, what we need to do is to read up material, manually go and look at feeds to see if that event has happened. In the future, you could have an agent that is autonomously monitoring the event, can actually take action on your behalf, and then tell you what you need to really do in terms of the actual analytics and the knowledge work. So that's going to be sort of the second form. And lastly, over time, agents will be able to run business processes. That's what they are really good at. They're able to keep track of the inputs, outputs, decisions. So you could have an agent that is constantly tracking sort of an insurance quote to actual sale or policy process, where the agent is actually always looking to see where bottlenecks are. So going forward, as customers are trying to adopt this, what we will do in the rest of the session is actually talk a little bit about the platform that you can use to actually build these. And then we'll also have some demos. So I'm going to get Jared to come back on stage and talk you through some of the platform capabilities that we have.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, so I want to give you a little bit of a sense of scale of how many of these are coming at us right now. So at Microsoft, we just did a count internally. We have a little over 10,000 agents within our own company, and I know that probably scares a lot of you, and I'm going to go into that in just a second. Most of those are a user count of 1, but 10,000 internally just at one company. Broadly on our infrastructure, we see a little over 1 million agents created all over the world from many different companies in the last 90 days. So we are certainly heading in this direction. And if you ask IDC, they have this number of 1.3 billion AI agents by 2028. And so, man, we're just hurtling toward this at just breakneck speeds. And so we're thinking a lot about what are the tools we need to build, and I get asked a lot by clients like you about what tools Microsoft has, how you should think about them, which tool to use when. So I'm going to give you my quick version of this, of the 4 big ways to go and think about building agents. So I'm going to start at the bottom with Microsoft Fabric, and you've probably heard about Fabric IQ a bit. This is effectively the data layer, and what we do is we can use Fabric to create a facade on top of your data wherever it's at. I hate when I talk to clients and they have a 3-year data project that sits in front of them doing anything cool with AI, and we tend to start talking to them about Fabric. Leave your data where it's at, create a virtual OneLake on top of it, and use Fabric IQ to help understand that data, reason over that data, and quickly create agents that can access, read, and provide insights on it. On top of that is Azure AI Foundry. This is the PaaS platform for all of your GPUs, all of your models. Everything we build at Microsoft is built on top of Azure AI Foundry. This is the core fundamental building block. It's what Azure is to SaaS, Azure AI Foundry is to the AI world. To give you a sense of scale on this one, a fun quote I'm going to steal from Scott Guthrie is that it took us 5 years to get to our first 1 million cores in Azure. And today, we are adding a new 1 million cores every 36 hours. So to give you a sense of the scale here, that we're adding to this and ensuring that we have the right infrastructure in place, as well as bringing over 11,000 models, and newly announced yesterday, the Anthropic model set being live there as well. Now, on top of these platforms, then you need to actually build your agent. There are 2 main agent building platforms in my mind. One is Visual Studio / GitHub. This is the pro developer place. If you know what these products are, they're probably the right place for you to be building agents. You have ultimate control. Your development teams can go and build these things and deploy them out to your organization and to your customers. And then you've got CoPilot Studio. CoPilot Studio is an interesting one. If we're going to build 1.3 billion agents, it isn't just going to be developers that are building these things. I think we're rapidly heading toward a world where the way that you are productive as an individual is writing prompts and creating agents as opposed to creating Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint decks. And I think that's a fundamental shift in how we're all working at least myself. I'm already starting to do this in 5 to 10% of my work. I'm realizing that I can write a prompt or write a quick agent that can do the thing and add the same clarity to my organization as one of those other productivity suites would. So we see CoPilot Studio as a tool to help democratize agent building out to every single person in the organization and help be that next productivity tool, potentially in the future rivals Office products even. Like go and build whatever it is you want to build in an easy way, just like anybody can go and create an Excel. So these are the 4 big product areas. I'm going to give you a live demo of CoPilot Studio later on. Now, I wanted to give you a few tips and tricks. As I've gone and worked with financial services clients around the world, there's a few big things that I've noticed set apart the ones that are doing a really good job from some of the ones that aren't doing such a great job. So I'm going to give you a couple of those learnings today. So the first one, start with evals. Evals, evals, evals. I can't say evals enough. I'm going to say it at least 20 more times throughout the next 10 minutes of this conversation. I apologize in advance. So if you're going to know how your agent is doing, you have to set up evals so you know. You can't just test it once or twice, right? These are non-deterministic systems. You need to go and build hundreds of evals for the things that you want to do. Now, at first, you're probably like, oh my God, hundreds of evals. AI can help you generate evals too. Go and use it to help you build these sets out. and go and figure out what types of things are working well or not working well. You also then, as things change, which they rapidly will, this will give you an ability to know if that's okay and if it's helping your agents. If a new model comes out, you can run your evals to figure out how it's doing. And when I talk to you about some of these future other things that you're going to do, evals are key to evaluating these. There are eval systems built into AI Foundry that you can go and use, as well as CoPilot Studio, both of which make it quick and easy to generate, run, and evaluate your eval sets. So I can't stress enough, go build evals. Use them anytime you're building an agent. They are how you're going to find out if your agent is good or not. Next up. So when I go and tell people that there's 10,000 agents running around at Microsoft, everybody immediately goes, oh my God, like agent sprawl or shadow IT or any of these rough words is what they start talking to me about. I was like, oh my God, how do I manage all of these IT assets being developed all around my organization? And generally the strategy that I see work in financial services is a ring-based approach. And this is probably familiar to many of you, right? You start with a ring of one, and that's you, the end user. And you can do things like in this first ring is let them go and build agents that largely is the same amount of risk as you using CoPilot or using ChatGPT. It's just typing in prompts and seeing it go, and you're not really worried about it beyond there. Just like you're not worried about somebody making an Excel spreadsheet in the organization. Now, where that gets tricky is if they create an agent and then everybody starts using it. So in the first ring, we see people typically put controls in place that limit things like sharing, external data access. They go and apply their DLP rules to this space. So there are rules that need to be applied here. And we're releasing a white paper in the next week, if it's not already out. It's supposed to land sometime this week that talks about the type of controls we would recommend when working with other financial services clients. Now, as your agent gets more useful, and it's something that the team wants, you'll see them want to share it out to a small team. They'll want to send it out to a group of, let's say, 10 people, their small local working group. Here you apply a new set of controls. You let them share it with a small audience, but now you have this little bit of risk. What if that person leaves? How does that continue on? And so you have to do a little bit of governance here. You need to know that it exists. You need to be able to inventory it. I'm sure you guys saw many of the awesome new features around A365 that we announced yesterday. We're building a ton of great stuff to keep tabs on these and to let you do a little bit more in this next ring. Then as they get more and more useful, then you want to send them broadly. This tends to be more of a top-down activity. This is something that your whole company uses. This is an IT asset at this point. This needs to go through all of your governance. This needs to go through threat reviews. This needs to go through all of your typical controls and governance. So when it gets out to this level, then you need to have them go through all those things. You need to know who to call at 2 a.m. if it's not working, all the systems that you've already built up. So think about this in a risk-based system. What I don't want you to do is go and say, oh no, like throw the baby out with the bathwater here and say, we're not going to do agents because I'm worried about agent sprawl. Instead, develop these rings where your employees can be productive if they're only sharing to small audiences and the risk is under control. And then as it gets more and more important and as these skunkworks projects turn into something really cool, then go and apply the broader governance. So this is the strategy I've seen with organizations that are able to develop these rapidly and control their risk at the same time. Next up. You need to think about how you're going to measure your ROI. The best ones of these that are out there have ways to measure if their agent is successful or not. They're not just building a POC, they're not just trying it out, they're actually measuring it and understanding how it's doing when it hits the real world. So you need to be able to understand how many people are using it. How useful is that? Are they giving us thumbs up, thumbs downs? Is it giving accurate answers? Running this judge against it. So your evals are what you do before you release, and then this analytics you do afterwards to understand your ROI. What are the costs and how much value and benefit is it delivering? Again, there are several Microsoft products you can use to do this. I'm going to show you one in CoPilot Studio where you can evaluate how your agents are performing. But you need to make sure that you set this up before you release your agents. Otherwise, in 2 months, you're going to have a conversation with your LT about the ROI, and you want to make sure you have the data ready to go. All right, last big set of advice. This is really a deep cut, right? So as you get deep into doing this and you get beyond the POC stage, there are 3 big things that separate the awesome agents from the kind of works in a POC agent. So the first one is the right model selection. There are a bunch of models out there. Some models are fast, some models take a little bit more time but give you a well thought through answer. Some are cheaper, some are fine-tuned. Using the right model for the right job makes all the difference. So using a bad model for a job is going to make your agent really, really poor. So think a lot about what models you use. And you can imagine I have a great strategy for telling which model's the right one. And the answer is evals. Use your evals, run it against the models, and see how it does. The second bit is subagents. So as you get in beyond the simplistic use cases and really straightforward ones, you start realizing that in order to improve those evals, you have to do certain tasks differently. So I'll give you an example from us. So we build CoPilot, and we're trying to figure out constantly how to make CoPilot better. Something we wanted to do better at was SharePoint search and being able to find documents. And we realized that that's a very specific problem that required very specific tasks. So we created this sub-agent effectively within CoPilot that whenever it needs to go and do a SharePoint search, it can call that, and it runs its own processing loop. And it says, okay, my job is to find this bit of information, and I have these tools available to me. And those tools are things like do a lexical search, do a vector search, do follow a link, understand an image, things like that, things that are very important in finding the right data in SharePoint. Now, by doing that, we can also pick the model that's best for that exact activity and put it into that sub-agent. So we can optimize all of those things. We can optimize the prompts, the model, the tools that it has available, and let it complete its individual job. And that's how we work on making our evals better and better and better. As we identify that 20% of the queries coming in, let's say, and I'm making that number up, can go and use this particular agent. We get really good at that, and we move onwards. So these sub-agents, really critical to doing better. All the data shows that the more you can break down your problem into specialized problems, the better your overall agents will be. Last but not least is utilizing connectors from other companies. Everybody out there right now is building awesome ways to connect into your MCPs, into A2A systems, and to other areas. Bringing that data in is really important. So if you use Salesforce records, use Salesforce's agents to connect them in. We're going to talk about Morningstar here in a minute and how we can connect in their financial data into these agents. But bringing that data from other providers into your agent ecosystem is what really makes them wow the audiences. Don't just rely on what's in the model knowledge. Bring the knowledge from your line of business systems and the partners you already use. Many of them already have these connectors ready in the market today. Go find them and use them. Or if there's something really common, go and use somebody else's way of doing this. Don't innovate on it. There's a lot of really common use cases, and a lot of people are already solving many of these problems. Go find them and use them in the market today. So these are my 3 big kind of deep cuts in how to go and build great agents. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Adrian on stage to tell you a bit about Edward Jones's journey and some of the things that they've learned along the way. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you. This is my first time coming up here as a customer. Last year, I actually stood behind the booth there as a Microsoft employee. So what I wanted to do just to start off is introduce myself and then also introduce you a little bit to Edward Jones. I think that background there is going to be really, really critical for you understanding the problem that we're actually trying to solve. So Adrian Crockett, I'm a general partner and head of Edward Jones Lab. So I look after AI, analytics, data strategy, emerging tech, and also, and this is an important one, a low-code lab. So I have about 50 people who are just focused on exactly what Jared was talking about. So I'm going to refer to those people as low-code, or alternatively, we might use the phrase maker. They are thinking about how they are actually developing agents to either augment, alternatively automate workflow processes at Edward Jones. Okay. So hopefully there are a lot of Edward Jones customers out there, but Edward Jones, I've got about 55,000 employees total. And of that 55,000 employees, about 46,000 are actually in branches all across America. So there are about 20,000 branches, and that's where we actually provide the bulk of our wealth management advisory from. We do that to approximately 6 million households across all of America. Now, why this is important is within that 46,000 employees, I can actually cut that down only to about 3 or 4 different personas. Because of that, I can actually really start to think about scale. I'm not actually delivering an agent to 5 people or 1 person. I'm actually looking to do that for 46,000 people simultaneously. So we'll go through a little bit of the journey and some of the learnings that we've had. Now, I didn't want to reiterate what Jared just went through, but I do want to represent that all of the critical learning blocks that he talked about, how do you actually do evals, what is your governance circle, all those elements are really fundamental issues that you're going to come across in your low-code journey. So I always like to think about AI and ask the question, has the world changed? Now, AI has been around for a very long period of time. I worked in capital markets for about 20 years and have been using AI for a very, very long period of time. So what's different this time? What is different this time is the ability of every knowledge worker and every person on Earth, really, to experience this for themselves in a very low-cost way. So previously, Jared used the phrase, and Hemanth also used the phrase, democratization. We are at a democratization moment. And AI is changing, in particular, the way that we actually think about knowledge work. So we're now seeing this when we're thinking about an end user experience really impacting a couple of different trends. So the first one, I think, is people have shifted their mindset from a search vehicle into a chat vehicle. That is almost becoming our default assumption, how I interact with things. We're also seeing search everywhere is not search anymore, it's actually AI-powered search. Browsers, many of you will have noticed a side panel on your browser. And then complex to simple workflows. So we're seeing massive, massive shifts there. And importantly, we're actually seeing this across consumer technology before we actually see it in enterprise technology. But consumer technology is moving at such a pace that it's up to all of us to actually keep up. Now, how do I think about that actually personifying itself? When I'm sitting down talking to those 46,000 employees, they're actually using AI experiences in their personal life on a day-to-day basis. Anytime I go out and survey those people, I get roughly 80% of those people coming back and saying, I am using an AI assistant in my personal life on a daily basis. So their question has to be, why don't I get this at work? And for all of your employees, they're asking exactly that same question. So final pattern that we are seeing here is really a massive, massive shift from containers, and Hemanth was talking about capital markets before. So previously, we used to see a lot of people using containers to deliver their technology. We're now seeing that shift to an enterprise browser. It's really the combination of those couple of different patterns that we're actually seeing drive the differences in the way that our employees are expecting to interact with technology. So, anytime you go through one of these seismic changes, you need to think about what the differences of experiences are. So this is just an illustration of what we refer to as a practice desktop. So the practice desktop is a tool that our 46,000 people use on a daily basis. So this is a little bit forward from where we are at the moment, but what you'll see there is a couple of patterns that I was talking about. This actually has an omnipresent assistant. Underneath that omnipresent assistant, on the far right-hand side, I think of this as the trusted sidekick. There are a whole bunch of agents underneath that. There's sub-agent architectures. But the important thing is, we are not putting a burden on the employee. They come to one place to get their answers about their practice. So when I first joined Edward Jones a little over 6 months ago, someone asked me a question. They said, what do you think we are miscomprehending here? And at that point in time, I said, AI will permeate everything. Some people think about this as my regular digital enterprise and then my AI enterprise. That will not be true. I've changed the tense here. AI is permeating everything. When we think about things that we are building at Edward Jones, when we're thinking about vendors that we're working with, it's no longer turn a switch on and turn AI on. It's embedded in each one of those tools. And if it isn't, we're probably not delivering the best experience to our employees. So Jared talked about some different journeys more from an engineer's perspective. So how do I actually think about governance rings? How do I actually think about evals? How do I actually think about validating the ROI of these investments? So probably a little bit more from a product perspective. What I wanted to do here is be very, very clear that we also really need to focus on the end user's experience. So a couple of things that I think we are getting wrong in financial services that we have been very focused on getting right at Edward Jones. So the first one is ease. When I look across financial services, we often have a miscomprehension of the relationship between an assistant or a co-pilot and an agent. How do you see that? Well, has anyone actually got 10 assistants? A lot of people actually have 10 assistants, which are powering 10 agents. Think about what you're actually doing to the end user there. You're increasing their cognitive load. They have to remember which assistant interface they go into for which particular tasks. So that's a recipe for disaster. So what we did at Edward Jones is we were very, very focused. We said that most employees would have only up to 3 different assistant layers. They will have the assistant layer in core platforms like Microsoft, so M365 Copilot or Copilot Chat. For everyone in those branch teams, they will have the practice assistant as their primary vehicle. And then I so happened to sit next to one of the engineers from Edward Jones, just by coincidence. He uses Copilot Chat, GitHub Copilot. So depending on what functional area within the firm, but it needs to be a de minimis number. You should actually be pumping through and extending the skills that are flowing through that assistant. The second thing that we're very, very focused on is empowering our employees. So we've spoken a little bit about democratization, but we also need to think about democratization at scale. How do I actually roll out a new agent to 46,000 employees, but make each one of those people look in the eyes of that agent and make it feel like theirs? So a core philosophy here is we seed. So the 10,000 people who are not in the branches we refer to as home office. We will build a lot of these agents, we will populate them, and then we will send them out to the practice areas. But importantly, we will allow them to change them and personalize them. So an example of that might be, how do you actually lay in segmentation of your client base into a particular agent? I shouldn't be controlling that. Each of our employees should have a sense of ownership and, dare I say, agency. An agent without agency is not an agent. So we need to allow that to happen. So we're very focused on that. And then how do we actually expand? Timely, actionable insights. Actually just delivering a notification at any random time is not powerful. When I think about timely, actionable insights, one of the core areas that we need to focus on is making sure that it's in the workflow that the user is in. So we want to meet the user where they are. Switching or chair swivel is dead. We've got to solve that here. Okay, I'm going to finish up here. Things our associates see. So as I said before, what we've been very, very focused on is making sure that there is a de minimis number of assistants that each employee goes to. They know why they are going to one assistant versus another assistant. If I've got an engineer, they know why they are going to GitHub Copilot. If I've got another employee in one of the practice areas, they know why they are going to the practice assistant. So at the moment, we have rolled out assistants to every one of our 55,000 employees. We've really got 3 core areas that roll out to more than 10,000 users each. So the practice assistant. The practice assistant is, as I've mentioned, is where those 46,000 people interact with an assistant. So that's currently at about 46,000 people. Additionally, I have Copilot Chat available to everybody in the firm. And then finally, for my home office employees, I also have M365 Copilot. Now, why do I have M365 Copilot for those people, and I have Practice Assistant for the people in the branches? Because I had to actually match where they're working and their work artifacts. So the people in the home office are principally working in M365. So that's where I want the assistant to be, because I don't want them swiveling. The practice team are principally working in the practice desktop. I want them to be there. I want their attention to be focused there. So one thing that is really important here is when we're thinking about building agents, what I want to make sure is that the agent that I build is agnostic to the distribution channel. So I think about all of these as distribution channels. So if I'm building in AI Foundry, or if I'm building in CoPilot Studio, I want to make sure that an end user can ask the same question in each one of those interfaces and get the same answer. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give Jared a little bit of a challenge. As he said, at Edward Jones, we've recently gone through, we've set up this low-code delivery team, and what we're actually going to do is we are going to show you a live demo of actually building a financial insights agent. He's going to do that in 8 minutes and 45 seconds. Told me he needed 10 minutes, so let's put him under a little bit of pressure. We're going to be hooking up to Edward Jones content that is in combination of SharePoint, also the email of the end user, and then also some specialist systems, and combine that with Morningstar's MCP. So let's go.
All right, thank you much. Only 8 minutes. It's going to be great. All right, so everything you're going to see today is live and in production, which, by the way, doing AI demos is one of the scariest things I've ever done on live stages. But everything you're going to see is real, live. You can go do this today yourselves. So the first thing you'll notice, this is our new homepage. And we've gone and made a ton of improvements to our AI builder and using natural language. So from here, you can build either agents or more deterministic workflows using our visual editor. I'm going to ask it to build me an agent using Edward Jones' investment philosophy. I want it to look over my customer notes in Dataverse Daily and send me an email if there's an action I should take. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. Adrian, I don't know if you want to tell us a bit about how a person would normally do this job today.
Yeah, so I think I sort of gave a little bit of an introduction there when I was talking about all the different systems that the person was actually going to, or that are embedded in this agent. So what would normally happen is really that swivel chair. I would actually have to go into one system, another system, another system, and this is overlaying intelligence across all those different elements. So I think for the end user, getting rid of the swivel is really the core thing here.
All right, so if we take a look at it, since we said we wanted to do this daily, it's recommended a reoccurrence trigger. So this is a trigger to go and run this agent daily. We can add that in a click. It's gone and generated a set of instructions for us. This is using industry best practices for the best instruction patterns. Again, just from a couple of sentences, it's done this. It's gone out and done a knowledge search. So this uses WorkIQ. It's looked at my SharePoint. It's looked at my documents and said, you have this Edward Jones investment philosophy document. That sounds super relevant to what we're trying to do. Let's go ahead and add that. So now I've added the set of knowledge that I know is important to the agent. And then it's got a set of tools that I can use. And here's one to send an email. I could just go and add that, connect in, add and configure, great. Now it's going and adding an email tool. Now each of these tools I'm adding, this is another system I didn't have to go to. The agent's going to go to that system for me, which is really exciting.
And I think the element of delegation of these tasks here is really powerful. The recurring triggers is something that I would encourage all of you to actually lean into. I think gone are the times where the human needs to think, I need to jump into system X to go and do this. We can actually delegate that to the computer, and it can come back and tell us what we need to know.
All right, so I went ahead and did one ahead of time. Adrian was very picky on his colors, so we've got the Edward Jones colors and themes in here. So this one, I've made a couple of other changes that I want to call out. First off is that I've picked the right model. So for this, I'm using Sonnet 4.5. It's truly amazing at financial analysis and tool calling. It makes a huge difference. Go and try these models out. They're incredible. We can use a bunch of different models to get the job done.
I'll just interrupt really quickly there. Yeah. That eval step that Jared was talking about before was really critical. When we're thinking about our aspirations at Edward Jones, it's to be able to set up an agent like this and have it in production within 24 hours. A decent portion of that is making sure that we're actually picking the right model. Now,
we've given it a base set of instructions. It's an autonomous assistant to a financial advisor at Edward Jones. It needs to use up-to-date Morningstar data, who's one of their data providers. And it's got some tone and style. It's connected to our client holding system. So this is going to go and be able to get our clients' information, their stock holdings, stuff like that. And it's got an ability to send emails. So this is it. This is all we've written for its instructions. We've told it to be a financial advisor. And you can see that I've gone and connected these up. Now, Morningstar has gone ahead and built an MCP server that provides all of their data. So in a couple of clicks, I can add Morningstar. I log in as a customer. And you can see that all of these tools populate. A data tool, articles, analyst research, ID lookups, all this sort of stuff just populated. Click, add, done. It's here. So now we've added all of this capability into the agent. Let's go ahead and run it, the moment of truth, and see what it looks like. So I'm going to run a sample trigger. This is going to go, and I went and put in some sample data, and I made it kind of like me. I went and said, this is a Microsoft employee. They get paid in a lot of Microsoft stock. I want you to look at that over time and say, what's my exposure into it, and try to keep me well diversified as a client. And so I said I wanted to keep my Microsoft exposure at around 5%, since I also work here, live there, et cetera. So let's run it and see what it thinks about me. Oh, hold on, new session. I ran a test beforehand. I want you to see it from scratch.
So when this is running, I want everyone to think about what the old way of doing this is. This sort of process is going to be done in 30 seconds. This is like, call it an hour-ish worth of work in the old world.
All right, let's hit it. So the first new thing you're going to notice here on the right is a chain of thought. So this is what it's thinking, how it's going about the problem. On the left, you're seeing tool calls. So it's getting our client holdings, it's going through and figuring out what those are. All it's got is tickers to go off of, and then it's got to get everything else from Morningstar. So it's going to call Morningstar, it's going to get real-time market information. This is real live data calling the real live production MCP server. You'll see here, it actually makes, I love this, it actually makes a wrong call. It gets an error back, it fixes the error, and it continues onward. All of this is just because it's multi-churn orchestration happening. I actually got this when I was testing it out, and I was like, no, I'm going to leave it so you guys can see what it looks like as the agent figures out how to do this job well. So now it's getting all of the most recent data. Here it is. And it's also figured out that my index funds hold Microsoft. So it's not just, and I didn't tell it to do this, it knows my direct Microsoft holdings, but also the exposure I have within the index funds that I own in my portfolio. And it's doing math across each of these, looking at the percentage amounts in each of them, to figure out what my total exposure is to Microsoft stock.
And I think I'll just touch on that. Like, I think a lot of people think about, when they're seeing something about this, the first thing they think about is productivity enhancements. Finding that double click on the fact that he actually had some index exposure and the index in itself actually had the I'm going to say that the vast majority of humans wouldn't actually do that double click. So I want to just take a moment to actually recognize that as a big difference.
Yeah, so if you were to see behind the scenes right now, it's writing HTML in an email if you were to be watching it. Remember, this is all happening autonomously, so a real user is not going to be sitting here waiting for this. They're just going to wake up to this email. But it's got a ton of email to write out, and I think you'll see in a minute when you see how much it's put into this analysis about what it's doing behind the scenes as it writes this email.
And the thing that I loved about this whole process once we started using CoPilot Studio is someone on my team, I gave them the task, we'd been talking to Morningstar, we knew that we wanted to actually hit the Morningstar MCP, and it took them 17 minutes without having actually used CoPilot Studio before. 17 minutes. Now Jared knows what he's doing, so he's going to be able to do it in 8 minutes, but 17 minutes before we could actually see something.
All right, it sent the email, so let's go ahead on over and do a little refresh so you can see my inbox. Here it is, 10:58, so you know I'm not lying. Here's what it's generated. It's used the Edward Jones template. It's built me a diversification alert based on this, my exposure in my portfolio, the exposure breakdown for the various things that I hold, recommended action plan, risk analysis, market context. All of this goes to my financial advisor before they wake up in the morning. And it generated all of this. I didn't have to do any of this. I didn't tell it what to do. It came up with this as the right things to build. So it's a really exciting capability that we can do now. Now, in the last 40 seconds, I'm going to show you two cool things. One is I talked to you about evals before. We have evals built in. We went and generated a set of evals. You can, oh, no, this is the wrong one. Evals here. We've got a set of evals. You can see I'm at 92%. It's important to be able to do things and not do things. So I've asked it to not give me specific stocks to invest in. and it says, ooh, these are mostly there, but you were maybe a little too helpful when I asked for a specific stock. And last but not least is after you deploy this, you need to look at that ROI. So again, you can go to analytics and you can see, how is my agent being used? How many people looked at it? What types of questions were they asking? Was it what I thought they were going to be asking it? How did it do on those? We use a GPT judge to give you insights into that. And one of the most common questions I get, how much is it costing me? And what are the key drivers of that cost? So all of this is built in for this agent, ready to go, and built in minutes. And with that, we are 15 seconds over. So thank you so much for coming. Feel free to come and ask questions for us afterwards.